There are moments in life when silence becomes louder than words, when the weight of existence presses down so heavily that even breathing feels like a burden. In such moments, you wonder whether your strength is enough. You ask yourself silently, with trembling lips and heavy thoughts, will I make it through this? But life doesn't always answer with clarity. Sometimes it only gives you a mountain. This mountain does not speak, it does not bend, it does not accommodate your pain or your cries. It simply stands, immovable, cold, towering, and you in front of it feel small, fragile, breakable. This mountain is not just a challenge, it is every unanswered prayer. It is every loss you have suffered, every time you were misunderstood, every betrayal, every disappointment, every night that felt too long, and every morning you were afraid to face. This mountain has no sympathy, and yet it gives you a path. Not a path made easy, but a path made real. The truth is, you passed the hardest time, not because it vanished, but because you kept going. When you were tired, you didn't surrender. When you fell, you stood again. When your faith was thin as a thread, you held onto it with whatever strength was left in your trembling hands. People may never see that battle. They may never know the tears you cried in silence, the prayers whispered in the dark, the breathless moments where all you could do was endure. But God saw, and God said, you passed, because passing is not about achievement. It is not about conquering the mountain or reaching the summit in record time. It is not about shouting your strength or proving your worth to the world. It is about surviving without losing yourself. It is about walking through the fire without letting it consume your heart. It is about feeling pain and yet still choosing to be kind, still choosing to forgive, still choosing to love, even when everything inside you has been broken into 1,000 pieces. Do you know how sacred that is? To break and still not hate the world, to bend and still not lose your humility, to hurt and still not want to hurt others. This is strength. The world often glorifies external achievements, the trophies, the accolades, the public victories. But the greatest victories happen in the realm no one sees. When you chose to keep going, when you stood on shaking legs, when you wiped your tears and said, just one more step, that was the moment you passed. That was the moment God saw you. The divine does not measure you the way the world does. The world looks for power, but the divine looks for perseverance. The world counts followers, but the divine counts how many times you didn't give up. Even when no one cheered for you, even when no one clapped, even when no one believed in you, you believed. And that belief became your light. You held it gently through every storm, like a single flame in the wind, refusing to let it die. Some days you thought the flame had gone out. You felt nothing, no hope, no strength, only numbness. But even in that numbness, something deeper remained, the breath that kept rising and falling, the quiet voice inside that whispered, stay. And so you did. You stayed, and in doing so you passed the hardest. Not because the time grew easier, but because you grew deeper, you grew inward. You became more still. Like a tree in winter, stripped of all its leaves, you remained rooted, waiting, trusting that even though nothing made sense, and even though everything seemed to fall apart, something in you was still alive, still waiting for the sun to rise again. People may look at you today and see a calm face, a composed presence. They may admire your grace, your discipline, your resilience, but they don't know what it cost you to become this version of yourself. They don't know how many nights you cried alone. They don't know how many mornings you wanted to give up, but you didn't. And that is why you are here. Not because you were always strong, but because you chose not to let weakness define your story. You see, passing the hardest time is not about proving anything. It's about protecting something sacred within you. It's about holding on to your values when life tempts you to abandon them. It's about choosing silence over revenge, patience over anger, love over bitterness. These are the decisions that build a soul, not in moments of peace, but in moments of fire. Think of the times when you were betrayed, when someone you trusted turned away. You could have chosen to shut your heart. You could have become cold, but you didn't. You allowed the pain to visit you, but not to build a home within you. That is passing the test. That is what God sees, not just your scars, but how you chose to heal. Healing is a quiet, holy act. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand recognition. It simply happens, softly, day by day, moment by moment. And now, when God looks at you, He does not see a broken person. He sees someone who has been remade. Someone who walked through the storm, not untouched, but awakened. The hardest times did not break you. They revealed you. They showed you what you are made of. You learned who was truly there for you. You learned how to rely on your breath, your discipline, your stillness. You discovered the sacred power of solitude. You learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is rest, pause, and not chase, but receive. There is a time to climb the mountain, but there is also a time to sit in its shadow and be still, to close your eyes, to say, I am not where I want to be, but I am no longer where I was. That space in between, the place of becoming, is where transformation happens. You passed not because you ran fast, but because you walked slow and never stopped. You passed because you chose not to carry anger, even when you had every right to. You passed because you forgave others, not to set them free, but to set yourself free. You passed because you looked into the mirror and didn't turn away from your reflection. Even when you didn't like what you saw, you faced it. You stayed. You passed because you realized your worth is not determined by what you lost, nor by who left, nor by what others said about you. Your worth is determined by your breath, by your essence, by your ability to feel deeply and still choose peace. This is the unseen success. This is the invisible medal. This is the divine whisper that says, you have made it. So now, walk not in pride, but in peace. You do not need to explain what you have been through. You do not need to justify your silence or your scars. You carry the mountain within you now. It is no longer something you fight. It is something you embody. The strength it gave you is quiet, like the earth beneath your feet. Firm, present, alive. Let others chase noise. Let others seek validation. You have already been validated by the divine. You passed. And because you passed, you can now guide others. Not with words alone, but with your presence. When someone breaks in front of you, you will not rush to fix them. You will simply sit, listen, hold space, because you know how it feels to not be seen. And now, you become the eyes that see, the ears that hear, the hands that do not judge, but simply hold. This is the gift of pain transformed. This is the grace of one who has passed through the hardest time. The mountain no longer intimidates you because you became the mountain. You no longer ask, when will the storm end? Because you have become the calm within the storm. And in your stillness, the world begins to shift. God said, you passed the hardest time, not because you are perfect, but because you are present. Not because you avoided suffering, but because you turned suffering into wisdom. Not because you never cried, but because your tears watered the roots of something eternal within you. And that is something no one can take away. So now breathe, walk slowly, smile without reason, and remember, you passed, not by escaping the fire, but by walking through it with grace. You are not who you were before. You are something more, whole, more real, more true, and that is enough. Pain is a teacher that walks into your life uninvited. It does not knock gently at the door, nor does it come with compassion. It arrives like a storm, unannounced and relentless. It takes what you thought you needed. It uproots what you thought was permanent. And in its presence, you forget how to feel safe. You question everything, your path, your faith, your worth. Pain makes you feel like a stranger to yourself, but over time, if you stay still long enough, if you resist the urge to run, you begin to realize that pain has not come to destroy you, it has come to awaken you. And so, not you passed the hardest time because you stayed awake. When everything in you wanted to close, shut down, and go numb, you stayed open. You allowed yourself to feel the full weight of grief, disappointment, heartbreak, confusion. You didn't try to bypass the ache. You didn't rush into distraction. You sat with it. You breathed through it. And slowly, something began to change. The pain that once consumed you began to reveal its message. It spoke to you in a language without words. It said, there is something in you that suffering cannot touch. There is something in you that remains, even when all else falls away. And that something became your anchor. The world often teaches us to run from pain, to cover it with noise, with activity, with consumption. But you didn't run. You faced it. You allowed it to shape you, not into something bitter, but into something wise. This is why you passed. Because pain no longer controls you. It has become your teacher. It has become your mirror. It has become your wisdom. There were days when it felt like too much, when your chest felt tight, when your thoughts became heavy clouds, when your body carried tension like armor. But still, you did not collapse. You let the discomfort rise. You let the fear breathe. You did not judge your emotions. You became the space for them. You did not push them away. You said, let me see you. And in seeing your pain clearly, you began to see yourself clearly. Who are you when everything is stripped away? Who are you when there is no applause, no reward, no validation? You are stillness. You are breath. You are presence. You are the awareness that watches thoughts come and go, that watches emotions rise and fall, that knows how to sit in the middle of chaos and not become it. Pain did not teach you weakness. It taught you the sacredness of stillness. Before the pain, you may have measured your strength by how much you could accomplish, how much you could hold, how much you could endure. But now you know, strength is not about force. It is about softness that refuses to close. It is about the ability to remain gentle, even when life is harsh. The ability to choose compassion, even when it is easier to turn away. The ability to see your own reflection in another's suffering and say, I know this place. You are not alone. This kind of wisdom does not come from books. It does not come from philosophies or theories. It comes from experience. It comes from nights you spent weeping silently, where your pillow became your sanctuary. It comes from mornings when you felt empty but got up anyway. It comes from moments of raw honesty with yourself, when you realized you could no longer pretend to be who you used to be. It comes from the breaking. Pain breaks the illusion. It strips you of your masks. It asks you what is real. And slowly, layer by layer, you answer. You found that realness not in the perfection of life, but in the imperfection of your humanness. You found that even in despair there is beauty. Even in sadness there is sincerity. Even in loneliness there is the presence of something deeper, something eternal, something divine. God does not give pain as punishment. God allows pain as a path that leads not outward but inward. You walked this path. You stumbled. You fell. But you rose again, and each time you rose, you did not return the same. You carried something back with you. Insight, humility, tenderness, depth. This is the treasure that only pain can reveal. You passed the hardest time because you no longer fear discomfort. You meet it now with curiosity. You say, "What are you here to teach me?" You listen, not just with your ears, but with your presence. You no longer try to control every outcome. You understand now that pain has shaped you more than comfort ever could. It brought you closer to your true self. It humbled your ego. It deepened your empathy. It grounded your spirit. Think of the people you now understand in a way you never did before. Those who are grieving, those who are lost, those who are carrying invisible burdens. You see them now, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of knowing, because you've walked through that same shadow. You know the silence, you know the fatigue, you know the longing for light, and so you offer something powerful. Presence, not advice, not solutions, just presence. And in that presence, others begin to heal. This is wisdom. The world is full of people who have knowledge, but few who have wisdom. Wisdom does not speak often. It listens. It does not boast. It understands. It does not need attention. It radiates quiet strength. And that is who you are becoming. Not someone who needs to prove their worth, but someone who simply embodies it. You no longer chase after things to feel complete. You are learning that completeness is not something to attain, but something to return to. Pain brought you home. Home to yourself. Home to your breath. Home to the awareness that is always here, watching, witnessing, holding space for all that arises and passes. You passed because you allowed the fire of pain to burn away what no longer served you. False beliefs, conditioned fears, old stories, and what remained was the truth of who you are. There is a silence now within you, a deep, rooted calm. Not because you have avoided storms, but because you have stood in them and found your center. That calm is not apathy, it is presence. It is clarity. It is wisdom born from suffering. And in that calm, you carry something others can feel, even if they cannot name it. You walk into a room and your energy speaks before your words do. People feel safe around you. They feel seen. They feel less alone because you carry the medicine of experience. Pain was the path. And now you are becoming the healer, not by fixing others, but by embodying peace. By being a reminder that it is possible to hurt and still love, to fall and still rise, to grieve and still grow. You are the living proof that suffering can be transformed. This is why God says you passed, because you didn't let pain close your heart. You didn't let it poison your mind. You used it to sharpen your vision, to deepen your trust, to expand your compassion. You did not collapse into self-pity. You did not drown in bitterness. You allowed the ache to awaken your depth. You allowed the hardship to humble your soul. You allowed the silence to teach you how to listen. And now, the pain that once felt like a curse has become your wisdom. It guides you, it keeps you grounded, it reminds you of what matters. It keeps you humble in moments of success and hopeful in moments of despair. It whispers to you, not with fear, but with insight. You've been here before, and you made it. So when life becomes uncertain again, as it always does, you do not panic. You remember. You remember who you became. You remember the strength you discovered. You remember the sacred silence that carried you when words failed. You remember that pain is not the end. It is the turning point. And now, as you move forward, you walk differently. Your steps are slower, but more deliberate. Your voice is softer, but more powerful. Your heart is more open, but more discerning. You don't rush. You don't chase. You allow. You trust. You flow. Wisdom has replaced fear. Patience has replaced urgency. Awareness has replaced control. And you understand now that life is not always meant to be figured out. It is meant to be experienced, breathed, embraced, even the painful parts. Because those are the moments that break us open so that light can enter. And now that light is you. There are moments in life where you feel the weight of your own breaking. Moments where you are brought to your knees, not in prayer, but in exhaustion. Moments where it feels like everything around you is collapsing and the pieces of your own identity scatter like dust in the wind. You wonder if you'll ever be whole again. You wonder if the person staring back at you in the mirror is still you, or just a memory of someone you used to be. In that silence, in that deep spiritual fatigue, something happens. Not loudly, not with fanfare, but with quiet power. What tried to break you begins to build you. We often misunderstand the nature of life's heaviest moments. We think they come only to destroy. We think the betrayal, the loss, the abandonment, the collapse are punishments. But the truth is different. Life is a great sculptor. It carves away the unnecessary. It strips the surface to reveal the core. And sometimes that carving feels violent. It feels cruel. But within the sharpness of pain, there is a greater purpose being fulfilled. She promised today, try feeling life to the full. What tried to break you was the very pressure required to awaken something deeper within. You passed the hardest time not because you resisted breaking, but because you allowed yourself to be remade. You didn't fight the current forever. At some point, you let go. You stopped grasping for what was already gone. You stopped clinging to an image of how things were supposed to be. And in that surrender, you were not defeated. You were set free. Sometimes, what breaks you is not the event itself, but your resistance to it. When life does not go as planned, the mind panics. It says, "This is wrong. This should not be." But the soul speaks a different language. The soul does not cling to how things should be. It rests in how things are. And once you shift it into the presence of the soul, you begin to see the breaking not as a tragedy, but as a turning point, a sacred demolition of everything false, everything shallow, everything borrowed, so that what is real can rise. When the storm came, you did not know how to stand, but you learned. When the light disappeared, you did not know how to see, but you opened your inner eyes. When the world seemed cold, you did not know how to trust, but something inside you refused to become numb. This refusal, this invisible resilience, is what built you. The world only saw the outer collapse, but inside, a new structure was forming, a quieter strength, a stiller mind, a softer heart. The paradox is this: the things that were meant to break you are the very things that gave you form. Like fire purifies metal, the pain purified your perception. Like pressure shapes a diamond, the trials shaped your insight. The breaking did not ruin you, it initiated you. It brought you into deeper knowing. It moved you from surface living to soul living. You began to understand that your life is not about avoiding pain, but about transforming it. There was a time when you sought comfort above all else. You measured peace by how calm life appeared on the outside. But now you know better. Now you understand that real peace is found in the eye of the storm. Real strength is forged in the fire, not in its absence. What tried to break you made you sit still. It made you face parts of yourself you had long ignored. It exposed your shadows. And in seeing those shadows, you stopped being afraid of them. You stopped projecting them onto others. You stopped running. Everything that came to test you revealed your edges. And every time you met those edges, you found more of your center. The breaking expanded you. It deepened you. It taught you presence. It taught you patience. It taught you that there is no rush. Healing is not a race. Growth is not linear. Nothing is lost. Everything that felt like an end was the beginning of something your mind could not yet comprehend. Think of how you respond to life now, not with fear, but with awareness. Not with control, but with curiosity. You listen more, you rush less, you breathe. You understand that not every emotion needs a reaction. Not every story needs a conclusion. Some things are meant to be felt and let go. Some things are meant to remain mysterious. And that mystery no longer frightens you. It humbles you. It reminds you that life is not something you master, it is something you surrender to. You passed the hardest time because you stopped trying to be unbreakable. You became flexible. You became fluid. Like water that flows around obstacles, you found your way through the cracks. You stopped demanding answers and started listening to silence. You stopped clenching your fists and started opening your hands. And in that openness, you received what you truly needed. Not what your ego wanted, but what your soul was calling for. You didn't just survive the breaking. You allowed it to make you real, to strip away performance, to dissolve perfectionism, to teach you the value of authenticity. Now, you no longer feel the need to prove your worth. You know your worth. It is not in your achievements, your titles, your possessions. It is in your being, in your breath, in the way you return to stillness after the storm. The people who hurt you may never apologize. The seasons that broke you may never come back to offer closure. But you don't need them to, because your healing is not dependent on what others do. It is rooted in what you choose to see. And you chose to see growth. You chose to see meaning. You chose to see that what tried to break you built you. Even now, as you walk through quieter days, you carry echoes of those hard times in your body, a certain stillness in your gaze, a certain gentleness in your presence. People may not know what you've been through, but they feel something in you, an energy, a calm, a lightness that wasn't always there. It was formed in the fire, and it cannot be taken from you. What built you is not external, it is internal. You became the architect of your own healing. You designed a new way of being. Less reactive, more mindful. Less judgmental, more compassionate. You no longer strive to control every outcome. You trust the unfolding. You know that sometimes the worst thing that happens becomes the doorway to the best thing. You know that loss is not the opposite of life, but a part of it. And in accepting this, you found freedom. You no longer fear falling apart, because you know how to put yourself back together. You know how to breathe through chaos. You know how to wait without panic. You know how to trust the invisible hands of time. And that trust is your strength. That trust is your foundation. There were days when you couldn't see the point, days when you felt unseen, unheard, unloved. But those days taught you how to see yourself, how to hear the voice within, how to love the parts of you that felt unworthy. What tried to break you gave you that chance to meet yourself on the deepest level, without filters, without masks, without fear. You passed the hardest time because you stopped trying to be the person others wanted and started becoming the person your soul needed. And that shift changed everything. You now live from a deeper place, a place that does not crave validation, but radiates truth, a place that does not fight with life, but dances with it, a place where you can hold pain and peace in the same breath. You understand now that nothing was wasted. Every tear watered your growth. Every setback revealed a new direction. Every delay brought you closer to what truly matters. And every heartbreak cracked you open enough to feel the divine, to sense that even in the breaking, you were being held, you were being guided, you were being rebuilt. What tried to break you built you, stronger, wiser, softer, freer. You no longer walk with fear in your steps. You walk with reverence, with gratitude, with quiet power. And in your presence, others begin to feel safe, not because you preach strength, but because you embody it. Not the kind of strength that needs to win, but the kind that knows how to endure, how to bend, how to rise again and again. And now you are here, not just surviving, but living, not just existing, but awakening. Every breath you take now carries the memory of what you've walked through. And it carries the wisdom of one who knows. What came to break me was sent to build me, and it did. Quietly, steadily, perfectly. You are not who you once were. You are something more, something eternal, something whole, and that is enough.